Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. How are you all doing? My name is Amanda Ellis, and a very warm welcome to my channel. Today is Friday, the 25th of July, and I am going to be doing a video for you on the Bryan Kohberger sentencing and some words of spiritual nourishment and learning from all that occurred. Also, I would like to look at the Air India Flight 171, make sure I've got the right number, 171, air crash, which happened in June, where there are a lot of unanswered questions. And more than anything, I'm coming on to talk about that one because I have been given some insights and downloads regards soul contracts, manner of that type of death, and actually some very beautiful words which I think will bring a lot of peace to the situation. I'm also being asked to stand up for what may very well be a injustice done to the main pilot of that flight, who the finger is being pointed to with regards to being culpable. My guidance is that that is not the case, and I would like to explain why and what I feel might have happened. Before we do that, though, I want to talk about the Idaho 4 and the Bryan Kohberger sentencing, which happened on the 23rd of July. Now, I have done 2 videos on the Idaho 4 case, dating back a number of years. So I will link those below if you are interested in what I effectively was saying and deducing. And I'm very much one for wanting to follow through with regards to any particular subject that I read on. So I feel as though I owe it to those 4 that died to say something. So that's what I'm going to do. I did actually try and make this video yesterday. In fact, I did make this video yesterday. There was an hour and 16 minutes of material that was, even though I say so myself, very good. And I discovered that the microphone wasn't working. It wasn't the fact that I hadn't plugged it in, it was plugged in, it just wasn't working because a webcam was also plugged in from a podcast that I'd done earlier in the week, and I'd forgotten to take that one out. So, but it's interesting, just this block that you come up against when you are trying to bring sometimes words of light into what are very difficult, dark places. So, what I'll do to start with is I'm going to light a candle. We're going to start with the Idaho 4 case and what I observed during the family's testimonies, and also something to say on the nature of darkness in our world and also light as redemption. But one of you, I think it was Juliana, you gave me this little Idaho candle a couple of years ago, and I forgot to light it in my last video on this subject. So actually my 3rd video on it feels a perfect place to light this candle, and we're going to light it and ask for continued healing and recovery to all those who are pained and in loss. And we saw that loss played out in a very devastating way on Wednesday with the families, but also the shattered communities, the university itself, and indeed actually all of the people that have been affected by this over the wider world, because this case has captured imagination for a reason and captured interest for a reason, because of the sheer brutality and evil of it. I'm not going to make this video into a sort of expose or digging even further into the whys and the wherefores and the hows. Most of that has been covered in my first 2 videos. I will just say, though, that from what I could deduce, I felt that Bryan absolutely was there on the night of the murders, was the principal player and person committing the atrocities. But I've always had this nagging feeling that there was somebody else involved, or links to other energies, networks that have supported potential cover-up of other things or people that might be implicated. Now, whether I'm right or wrong in that, I don't know. But on the record, that is what I've said. But on the record are also 4 words that I've uttered a couple of years ago. And when you do sessions like this on YouTube, you are effectively bringing through messages from spirit. You are channeling. You are also picking up your own higher self's words of wisdom. And usually I forget what I've said. You know, occasionally, of course, I remember the nuggets, but I don't remember everything that I've said in previous videos. But these 4 words, sorry, it's first thing in the morning and my voice is a bit croaky. These 4 words have always stayed with me, and they are: Xana holds the key. Xana holds the key. I remember that coming through very clearly. And I remember at the time thinking, well, what does that mean? Does it mean that something to do with the nature of the way she was killed? Or, I don't know, there was just, let's track back. What does that mean? Xana holds the key. And I had a thunderbolt moment of realization on Wednesday with regards to what it did mean. Because Xana holds the key, I feel, means something very different to what we thought it did. And what I am getting is the fact that it was Xana's aunt during Wednesday's courtroom proceedings who turned to Bryan and said 3 words, the 3 most important words actually probably that were said, and they were, "I forgive you." Now that's hard to hear. I'm sure it's very hard to say. I am not saying that we all should be in that state. I'm not saying that any of the other family members should be in that state, because pain, trauma, loss, brutality, murder, to this degree of depravity and evil, is hard to forgive. Xana, though, was the housemate, it now turns out, who had the most stab wounds. She had over 50 stab wounds, including one to her heart. I tell you that because I feel it's relevant with regards to the way that the family members that were there were able to say, "I forgive you." Because having a family member who's been killed by a knife to the heart, somehow that woman found it in her heart to utter those 3 words, "I forgive you." And ultimately, forgiveness is one of the most important tenets of Christ-centered consciousness, heart-centered consciousness. I'm sure it also is important in many other major belief systems. Because the thing about forgiveness is it isn't just about the person you're forgiving. The saying is that forgiveness frees you. It frees you. And in many other ways, what other family members of the other people that were murdered said also was freeing to them, but they did it in a different way. But I did just want to say something about, those aunt's words. And I think not only did she say, "I forgive you," I think she also said something along the lines of, "And I'm praying for your family, Bryan," or something like that. So the other point about Xana holds the key. And what is the key? The key is maybe redemption, forgiveness, going back into the heart, which is the most hardest thing to do, as I say, when faced with such evil. But the other part of Xana holds the key is not only the aunt's uttering of those words, the mother, who I don't know whether she actually did say anything on Wednesday, but I have seen a video, an interview with her over the last couple of weeks. And I don't think I have to say allegedly, because I think this is all pretty much fact and out there in the media. The mother had had issues with drugs and Whether that also was dealing or not, I don't know. I'm not even interested to go back into that now. But the point is, I think she'd been in prison, or was in prison, and she's on record now of saying she found Jesus in the prison cell, and has turned her life around, basically, and is now living a healthier life with her church. So I'm not saying Xana holds the key. I just need to get a card to show you. I'm not saying Xana holds the key is about all of us have to suddenly become Christians. It's more to do with them showing that in the face of great evil, that light ultimately wins in whichever form it arrives at your door. I mean, and in the mother's case, literally at the door. The card that I'm shuffling for is the tethered and caged card, which is the card that actually links into almost sort of like devil energy from the Christ consciousness deck that I created. And those of you that have this deck know that there is a key actually right beside this person who is shackled and bound, unable to cope, unable to live, whether they are addicted to something or whether they are just in a lowered state of frequency. She found the key, and the key was handed to her by Jesus. So I think that's just very, very powerful. Also, all of the family's testimonies were powerful. There's been a lot of praise, rightfully so, with regards to the sister of Kaylee. And I wanted to say something on that. I mean, I'm sure there are whole videos on body language experts are going to be looking at that and Bryan's reaction to it, etc. And they were very powerful words. Reminded me very much of, you know, if Xana's aunt was modelling the energy of Jesus in that courtroom, Olivia, the sister, was modelling the energy of somebody like Kali Ma or energy of Lilith, a very ballsy, go-get-em type, divine, feminine, standing in her sovereignty and power, standing up for her sister and her friends. Very powerful, but in a very different way. Sit up whilst I'm speaking to you was some of the words that she was using. And effectively, she was calling him out. So that was powerful. I'm also noting that there seems to be something in her name. So I'll talk about Bryan in a moment, but effectively what we're seeing in Bryan is two words I've written down are empty shell. I know that Olivia, I think, has called him not human. I can understand why she said that. But ultimately, he is a human, but he's an empty shell of a human. You're looking at somebody who is so disconnected from their light, from their God, whatever that version of God may be for him in the past, present or future. So devoid of the absence of light and hope and joy, that what remains is an empty shell. And into an empty shell, of course, the devil can do great work, which I'm sure is what happened. So on one hand, you've got Bryan sitting there as this empty shell, devoid of much emotion. We'll talk about body language in a moment, but pretty much robotic in nature, in many ways looking half dead himself. And you have the sister called Olivia with an A. And actually, if you look at that name, it has the word alive in it. Alive with A on the end. And of course, A is the start of the alphabet, very much linked into the energy also of the Fool card, a new chapter, a new beginning. But it just seems very poignant that on one hand, we have the one who has created death, looking half dead, and the sister who is vibrant, full of passion, purpose, motivation, driven by standing up for something, of course, that matters to her, with this word alive in her name. So I wanted to say that. I I also felt it was extremely poignant, powerful, eloquent, actually, the silence of Ethan's family who were not present. Don't quote me on this because it's just something that I've read, and I might be wrong, but I read that they had chosen to spend the day on the lake instead of being in the courtroom. They didn't feel the need or the desire to stand up and say anything to Bryan. And I suspect that's probably because they didn't want to give him any more power. And they also wanted to show that we are getting on with our lives no matter what evil you have done to us. That silence is as powerful as anything else that was done or said in that courtroom on Wednesday. What else? The father of Kaylee, just noticing the fact that he faced him square on, turned the lectern or the pedestal to literally look him in the eye and say what he needed to say and get off his chest. I saw an interview with Steve afterwards where he basically said what he got back from that interaction was the fact that this guy just hates me. He hates me, hates everything I stand for. And there was definitely, in terms of body language from Bryan, even though he was passive, emotionless for a lot of the hearing, there was obviously also a lot of suppression and control of that, of the inner feelings that would have been there to some degree. A few times I did see something, I mean, probably when the sister was speaking, but also when one of the surviving housemates was talking about the love that Ethan and Zanna shared and described them as soulmates. And he really squirmed and couldn't cope with that, because ultimately you're being presented with a template of two young people in love, happily in love, wholesome, and it's everything that is not what he is or capable of at this present time. And I'm saying at this present time because as a spiritual person, I do believe in the energy of redemption, no matter what, because that's what Jesus would say and that's what Jesus does teach. What else to say then? So, talked about the father. There was also the father of Maddie, broken man. I mean, I'm sure they're all broken, but visibly very broken. Sending prayers, of course, to him. The surviving roommate's testimony, Dylan and Bethany. Dylan actually had the strength to sit there in a court of law and again say what she needed to say. It was completely gut-wrenching and heart-wrenching to hear. And Bethany, who wasn't there, but her testimony was read out by somebody else. Again, very eloquent, but what I thought was beautiful with that was that she brought to the table not just the death and destruction of what he'd done, but the happy times that they had shared as friends that can never be taken away. And this is the thing about, brutality and evil, that it can never take away what was before. So with regards to the times they'd shared, and, she mentioned various things that had happened, hang on to that joy. I'd also like just to spend a moment for us as a community to send some prayers to those two surviving girls. There's been a lot of information given on social media, in particular, speculation about them, implicating them in the crime. And that was referenced in the courtroom too. I just think that I've never done that on this channel. I never would, and I've never allowed it. I just would like us to send a prayer to those two young girls so that they can recover. What else did I want to say on this whole subject? I wanted to mention that, I don't know whether you noticed, but when Bryan was sat there for the duration, there was a picture of a black heart that was beside him. Now, I think if the judge had probably seen that, they would have taken it out of the courtroom, whether it was a doodle that he'd done, whether it was something that had been sent to him, or what, but effectively he was sat there with a piece of paper with the image of a black heart on it. And that looked very macabre, but also he was absolutely trying to communicate something in that moment. Probably that it's easy to say he doesn't have a heart, but, you know, certainly not a heart that is full of love or light or empathy. Nobody could do the things that he did. If he did have love and light in his heart, that's a given. But definitely also this energy of trying to control and trying to still somehow in his warped way give some type of narrative or communication, because he said he didn't want to say anything, but he sat there with a piece of paper with a black heart on it. It did actually take me to a song. I will just get the lyrics up. A song that I personally know, by a group called Mark and the Mambas. So many of you know I'm a Mark Armand fan. And this is a song from long, long ago. But it is called Black Heart. And I looked up the lyrics of it, and it does feel quite appropriate. And I feel that the lyrics are sort of putting us into Bryan's head. That's what it feels like. So Black Heart, playing with little pictures that my mind sends, counting the moments till my world ends. All I remembered are the bad times, and it's chewing away at my insides. When you looked that way, oh, I knew you wanted to hurt. You killed all of my dreams with your black, black heart. You see, there's projection that he put onto the girls who, in his head, had rejected him by having a cold heart, whereas actually they had the complete opposite. The cold heart is within himself. So let me just read that one passage again. When you looked that way, oh, I knew you wanted to hurt. You killed all of my dreams with your black, black heart. Night creeps. You know, he was creeping around in the night. Night creeps its wicked way just like a spider, stealing the feelings that hide. Black heart and wild, you were so like an angry child. When you looked that way, oh, I knew you wanted to hurt. You killed all of my dreams with your black, black heart. Pushing, your icy fingers always crushing, your jealous mind so disapproving. You laughed at all my ideas and encouraged all of my fears. It's almost like, it's inside his head, it's projection of what other people are doing, but actually it's all him. I wanted to mention the black heart. Anything else to say on this? For now, I don't think so. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Let's pull, though, maybe a card just to help bring some... I have actually got the cards that I pulled yesterday, but these are for the next part of the video. I don't know if I did pull cards for this, so let's just pull a couple. Let's just ask Idaho 4. Anything else to say in this particular video, please? Idaho 4. Opportunity. Wow. Look at that. That's the card that came, opportunity. On the bottom of the pack, can you see what that says? Forgiveness. And then we've got the card of courage. You see, you can get very easily attacked when you bring up the subject of forgiveness, particularly in difficult situations, because it's the energy of what do you know? You wouldn't be able to do it. I'm not saying I would or I could. I'm saying it's important that we at least try, because what is blocking our world right now from awakening and ascending is a lack of forgiveness generally. A lack of forgiveness and too much judgment is holding back this awakening of our planet. Now, the opportunity is in its infancy for forgiveness here. with regards to what happened in Idaho, very few people are going to be able to go there. But it's the fact that one person modelled it for us in the courtroom on Wednesday. One person had the courage to be able to do that. And that's all it takes for that chink of light to be present, to then start to grow, and for more people to reach up to that. You might like to think, well, is that card of forgiveness going to be Bryan at some point in the future? It's not what I'm picking up right now, no, because there is an emptiness there within his energy field. But if there is an energy of emptiness, ultimately, what we have to remember is that if the devil energy is effectively housed there right now, there is always a place for a more godly energy to enter. And that might not be for you and me to be concerned with in terms of whether that happens or not for him, but it's God's work, basically. I also think there's something about this case, as I say, that's captured so many people's imagination. I think there is a discussion to be had with regards to looking into the face, not just of a killer, but somebody who is empty inside. Because if you contrast that with the liveliness and the joy that it appears that the four that were murdered had when they were alive, you may or may not have seen, but I remember looking, 3 years ago when it was all had first happened, and there were lots of pictures in the news, and I know you can't base somebody's life just on social media pictures, but there was a lot of evidence, let's put it that way, of fun, happy, joyous, exciting times that these kids were having. A heart filled up with that versus a heart that has an absence pretty much of anything. So how has that happened? Was it always thus? Again, not really for us to speculate, but maybe just important to just spend a moment to reflect, and more than anything, to give gratitude to the fact that your heart, hopefully, is filled with love and light and hope and moments of joy. Rest in peace to Ethan, Xana, Kaylee and Maddie. And please remember those 4 words that were given to me 3 years ago. Xana holds the key. I really feel it is linked into this energy. The key is the one that frees us. And it also is to do with being able to move on from tragedy. I know that various family members on Wednesday were talking about that you will not control our future. We will move on from this courtroom and forget you. That's probably quite a tall order, but the desire is there to move on with their lives. So some might find it easier than others, but let's hope that can materialise. Thank you. Okay. Right, let's just now move on to a different subject. And I'm just going to use a spray just to clear the energy. Well, actually, what I'm going to use is the moon spray, Moon Magic. Because the moon energy, of course, is about illumination. We've just had a new moon in Leo, which was yesterday, I believe. So we still have the energy of that new moon in Leo, which maybe gives us the courage also to maybe look at these more challenging issues in our world. So, Air India, Flight 171. I believe, actually, there was an interview last night, I haven't seen it yet, that Piers Morgan did with a couple of, I don't know whether they were UK pilots, and it looked like an Indian pilot or somebody from, maybe connected to Air India, I'm not sure, I haven't watched the video, but I do know that he was just bringing up the whole subject of, well, was it pilot error, or is that something we're just leaping to conclusions about? And ultimately, why Spirit are asking me to talk about Air India Flight 171 is, number one, hopefully to give some peace to the people that are grieving, and also for you maybe to understand the passage of the soul during very difficult, awful situations such as what happened there, and probably also happened with Idaho 4 as well, because I do feel they are at peace. But it's to stand up for, as I said at the beginning, a potential injustice. So right now, the facts are this, okay? So I haven't actually got the date that it happened. Apologies for that. But I know it was in June. Air Flight 171 set off from India to, I believe, Gatwick, UK. And within around 30 seconds, the plane took off and crashed in a fireball. Everybody on board died, bar one person. That one person, before I forget to talk about him, again, we need to send some prayers to him. He's the only survivor. He's on record talking about the fact that his dreams are haunted by what happened, what he replays in his mind, whether it be imaginary or the subconscious churning up potential things that could have happened or distorting it somehow. He was in seat 11A, which I know a number of people caught on to because, I often talk about number 11 as being, it is a master number energy. It holds great power, the number 11. It's a gateway energy, it's a portal energy, it's a wake-up call energy, but it's also very dualistic. It can be very, very bright, it can also be very, very dark. And even though he survived sitting in seat 11A, of course there would be other people that were sitting in 11B, C, D, however the numbers were configurated that didn't survive. So, as I say, very dualistic. And again, a bit like Bethany and Dylan, there's been a lot of nasty stuff online, people with nothing better to do than making up stories about them. With this guy, he wasn't really on the plane. How could he have walked away from it? He's just making it up. He's after a quick buck. It's so sad, isn't it, what human beings instantly can descend to, that we look for the dirt, basically, rather than the miracle, okay? Because there's a miracle in terms of the fact that this man survived. It's a miracle that Dylan and Bethany survived. But rather than focusing on the miracle of that, it has to be, oh no, they have to have been in on it, this is, as I say, manipulation. He wasn't really on the plane. That's just an observation on human nature sometimes. And we can all maybe see aspects of ourselves in that lower behaviour. So again, bring in the prayer. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I love you, thank you. So the flight took off. Within 30 seconds it had crashed. I believe there was around 260 dead. I've got two numbers here actually, 260 or 265. I'm not quite sure, because all of the people on the plane died, including cabin crew and pilots, but also a number of people on the ground died because it crashed into a building. So it was horrific. Also that number 11, I've read it was an 11-year-old aircraft. I've also read that it pushed back from the gate to take off at 13:13, and you only know that because we've been given it. So I was just interested. Again, we've got that energy of it would be 1:1, 13:13 local time, but again it's a number 11 energy. There were people of mixed faiths, mixed nationalities there, mixed heritage there. Obviously a lot of British Indians on their way home or coming back from holiday. Not exclusively just British Indians, of course. There were two, when I say two light workers, I believe that everybody's a light worker. So, and I'll talk about that in a moment in terms of what I believe is a mass ascension moment for them. But when I say two light workers, there were two young men who I didn't follow, but I believe were on YouTube. I think they were Irish, and they were a bit like me. They taught about ascension and awakening and crystals, and they'd been on a very popular television morning TV programme here in the UK called This Morning. So they were quite well known. fairly well known. There were people of all ages, both sexes, as you would expect on a plane, an array of people of all types, etc. So the one thing I heard from Spirit, and I'm also going to show you some cards which I've pulled, is that there was a soul contract that all exited together. And when you look at that, we get caught up in the human mind, which says, well, hold on a minute, how can they be a soul contract or soul tribe? Because, they're British or they're Indian or they're American or they're that age, they're this, they're that. Because human beings like to divide based on all sorts of different criteria. But soul doesn't do that. Soul just sees soul. Now, I'm not saying that they were aware that they were all soul tribe, and I'm not saying that they were the only members of soul tribe. I actually feel that probably some of you that are watching are part of that soul tribe. I think I might be part of that soul tribe because I'm actually hopefully standing up for them here and going to bring some information through which is important to be passed on effectively. You have to have people on the ground also that still are here to speak for them. So whether I am or not, let's not get caught up in that, but I do sense that as well. So soul contract to exit at the same time. This isn't the first time it's happened, and it won't be the last time it's happened. You often see it in big events. 9/11 would have been a similar one. You have a group of souls that have made a pact pre-incarnation, which they don't remember whilst they're here, to exit at the same time. Can I also say that Idaho 4 probably would also fit into this category as well. But back to Air India, not only did they exit at the same time, what I'm being shown is it's like a mass ascension event. And I say ascension rather than awakening, because ascension effectively is about enlightenment. So I do know, and I'm not the only person that said this, it's been reported, quite a number of people have said this over the years, that in events such as these, and another one would have been, for example, Nagasaki, Hiroshima, where there is a big explosion of light in particular, and without being crude and too graphic, not much left of the bodies in many cases. And that's certainly the case with Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There is an instant enlightenment moment for those souls. They truly move into the light together. And, if they wish to get off the whole reincarnation cycle, they do so. They merge back into that beautiful golden pot from which we all come. So that's something, if it resonates, take it. If it doesn't resonate, leave it. But it is something that I feel as well. I'll show you these cards now before getting to the captain. So these cards are really why I'm talking about this video. I pulled these off camera about a week or so ago, and when I looked at them I thought, wow, you're really going to have to say something about this. It's more about the nature of death and the passage of the soul, and it's really beautiful. Before we get to the more beautiful cards, so there's this one card, and if in many ways I would quite like, your impressions of this card too. Don't get too trapped by what it says with regards to the words. It does say detours from the divine, which makes you think straight away, oh gosh, was this maybe not meant to happen? Or, I don't know, you could put something negative onto that. I'm not feeling that, but I am feeling the image. Because when you use an oracle card, it's more about what are you pulled to? Why is this card important? And what is the bit on this card that is the message? Because not all bits are often part of the message. So here we've got, when I first saw that, you could now in retrospect say it looks a bit like one of the windows in an aeroplane, but when I first saw it, it reminded me of a submarine, a porthole in a submarine. And straight away I heard the word pressure. Now, of course, it's not rocket science to realise that if a plane has gone up and come back down in 30 seconds, there's a pressure problem. But I don't know. I'm not even going to try and elaborate on what I was given more than that. But I'm hearing air cabin pressure problem. Now, the question is, was that before whatever occurred? That was the thing that brought it down. Does that make sense? So I'm just going to put that one there. cabin pressure, air cabin pressure, air pressure. That's what I'm getting. But these three cards are really what I want to focus on now. So however it occurred, however the plane came down, it came down. And then we get this beautiful energy. This says Labyrinth of Sweet Surrender. You see that? So on this card, there is somebody in sweet surrender. But more than anything, this feels as though this is an image of the soul. So the event happened. The first thing to say is that because it happened so quickly, I don't think there would have been hardly any moment for them to even acknowledge that there was a problem with the plane before they were no more. So, I mean, some people might have obviously realised something was happening, but it was so quick that almost as though there was an energy of protection in place so that they couldn't actually cognitively think through what was about to occur. Almost by the time they became aware that there was something wrong, it was over. That's what I mean by protection in place. Also, I very much feel as though the deaths were not painful. This also can be the case in brutal murders such as Idaho 4, which is that when the soul knows that it's going to leave the body, it leaves the body. So it doesn't have to bear witness to all of the awfulness of it. So I'm being taken to Zanna, for example. 50 stab wounds, most of which were self-defense, you would say, well, of course she was feeling it. Of course she was in her body. She was trying to fight it. But I'm being shown, and I hope I don't offend anybody here, but it's just what I'm being shown by spirit, the energy of when you cut a head off a chicken or something and it can still have a muscle response. I don't know how this works, guys, but all I do know and I feel and I've been given is that in cases of such brutality as this, the soul leaves the body. So the pain is not what you're imagining the pain to be. In many ways, the soul is looking down at what is happening to the body, but the body then is the empty shell. Interestingly, the body then is the empty shell. Yeah. Do you know, the first time I ever heard that whole concept, which again you might resonate with, you might not, but I feel it to be true. The first time I ever heard that and was given it by spirit was during a terrible case in the UK decades ago, which was Fred and Rose West, notorious serial killer who did all sorts of terrible things to women and they died awful deaths. And I was traumatized just reading about that case. And I remember spirit then saying they didn't suffer to the degree you think they suffered. They left their body before the final blow or, you know, whatever it was. So anyway, back to Air India, I believe that's the case as well. They didn't suffer to the degree that you think they might have done. It was instantaneous. And in that instantaneous moment of death, there was also enlightenment. And then we get this energy of sweet surrender. I mean, look at that card. It's so beautiful. Almost feels as though that person is flying, but they're like floating in water. After that, we get this card which says Spirit Horse Sovereign Power. And again, if you look at that card, we have a horse that is very much running freely through an ethereal plane. Whatever your concept is of where we go after we die, whether you want to call it heaven or anything else, is a different dimensional plane. And it's summed up by these two cards. Very, very beautiful. So the soul being free, and peace, just an energy of great peace with those two cards. And then the third and final card is this one, and it says the gathering. And this is about the fact that when we die, obviously people who are here on earth grieve us greatly. There's great loss, many tears. But there is also a gathering in spirit with regards to those that wait for the ones who are coming. So, and there is a beautiful poem on that, isn't there? Which I don't have to hand right now. I'll see if I can find it in a moment. But it's to do with a reception party waiting to greet every single person that dies. And there is no exception to that. There is always somebody that will greet you. And it will be somebody who loves you. And it might be somebody you recognise, and it might be somebody you don't recognise. But it will be, whether it's ancestral, whether it is part of Soul Tribe, I don't know, but there's always a reception party. So here we've got that reception party waiting for those that died to cross over. They were not alone as they passed. In many ways, there was this party waiting to greet them. So on one hand, we have a mourning here on earth, but we also then have a celebration in the other world. There is a returning home, and there's always somebody whose light is on waiting to greet us. I think that gives great comfort. So the final thing I really want to talk about in this video is the pilot. And because what's happening is there seems to be a groundswell of opinion that Captain Sumit Sabharwal, who was the main pilot, somehow has turned the engine fuel switches off himself and then put them back on again. The first officer, who's called Clive Kundar, is heard in the recording from the cockpit saying, "Have you moved the switch?" The main captain says, "No, I haven't." Now remember, all this happens within 30 seconds of takeoff, coming back down, and death. So that conversation is interesting, but it's not conclusive. And of course, there is a denial from this man. Now, I want to show you more than anything what this guy looks like, okay? So this is the man who is accused at the moment. As I say, the reports are not finalised. It is still speculation. But certainly with regards to good old mainstream media, I've seen plenty of headlines here laying the finger of blame firmly at his door. And many people, let's be honest, do not follow a case from start to finish. And it will be job done, he did it, on to the next piece of news. To the people who are lost, I think we deserve a greater examination of the facts than that. And also the energy. And I'm about the energy and trying to get to the facts. Now, this captain is said to have left his apartment building where he was caring for his father, and he said, "Please take care of Papa, I will be back soon." He was an elderly father who relied on him. By all accounts, this man was a family man. His colleagues speak very warmly of him and his energy. When I look into his face, I'll put the image back up in a minute so you can see it, but when I look into his face, more than anything, I see a very angelic frequency. Okay, I've worked with the angelic kingdom for a long period of time, and there is a frequency, there is an energy that often will be emitted and that you can see in somebody's eyes, somebody's energy field, and somebody's presence when they work with that. Now, I'm not saying he consciously worked with that. I don't know what his faith was. And it might be very different to mine, and that's absolutely fine. But I am picking up that at soul level, there was a very strong angelic frequency here. It's a kind face. It's a gentle face. I'm picking up words such as honour, duty, responsibility, familiarity also. And that familiarity is familiar with what happens in a cockpit, what's normal, what's not normal. This was a normal flight for him, is what I'm picking up. It's just a normal flight. As he said to his father, "Please take care of Papa, I will be back soon. Go off, do my job, come back." Nothing out of the ordinary in his energy. Now, why he's being targeted is people are saying, well, it has to have been him, and also bringing up mental health issues in the past. I think that seems to stem from bereavement. He lost his mother, and he'd had time off for grief, but he had been cleared to fly. And quite frankly, if every one of us with any past mental health issue or grief issue was tarred with the same brush of being a potential murderer, then there wouldn't be many of us left. Because it's one thing to say, well, he looks kind, his energy is beautiful, because it is, but he could still maybe take his own life. Yes, of course. But it doesn't mean he's going to take 260 other people with him. That's really what I'm getting at. When I look into his energy field, I do not see death. I do not see an energy of fear. I see an energy of love. And if anything, what I'm seeing with him is that, again, post catastrophe and tragedy, his soul is one that is helping the others to acclimatise to what has happened, literally sort of pick up the energetic pieces. And I get the word steward. He was a steward in life, and he's a steward in the afterlife as well. So if you believe in something such as the Rainbow Bridge, he's the one that's helping and making sure that everybody who's passed is coming and is arriving at the destination they need to be at, which is actually the other realm, okay? It's not where they thought they were going to be, which is Gatwick, it's the other realm. It's an enlightened place. So I hear the word steward with him. I will just show you the picture of the other co-pilot, First Officer Clive Kundar. His energy is very different. Again, I don't believe he's at all responsible, but I'll show you his image, but what I'm picking up with him is more of a galactic energy, also the energy of a knight, somebody very noble, somebody brave, like an energy of a knight. So in many ways, they were a perfect fit together. It's just a different energy, very strong, very courageous, noble also, knows what is right, what is wrong. He noticed instantly something was wrong in the cockpit. Your natural response, if you saw something wrong in the cockpit or the plane's not behaving as it normally does, is to, of course, say to the person who's sitting beside you, have you done something? It doesn't mean that the person sitting beside you has done something. Now, of course, this all leads to, well, if they didn't do anything, well, what the hell did happen? I do know that Boeing have had issues in the past. I'm not pointing a finger of blame. In many ways, this is an unresolved case right now. And the cards yesterday, which I will show you, were really suggesting that we need to have what's called a hermit phase. And the hermit phase is this period of intense introspection and reflection and digestion of all the facts, the energies, the circumstances. And what Metatron's saying to me is you can have all of that, but you still might put the jigsaw together in the wrong order and create the wrong image. So there is definitely a potential miscarriage of justice here done to this guy, I feel. Yeah, I was just saying that Boeing, I think, have ordered inspection of all of the, for example, engine fuel switches. There were reports that the plane, as it was flying in before it then flew out again, there's video footage where some of the passengers were complaining of things that were not working properly, that should have been working properly. You know, there are other things that need investigating. But I just think that when you've got a multi-billion-pound industry, does it close ranks and try to protect itself? Or is it easy to blame a dead man who cannot speak back? That's really my point. So I think we just have to ask that the truth will be revealed in the time frame that's going to happen. Sorry, it's hard. When you look at cards and you think, hold on, I can't remember how they all came out. Yeah, you see this thing about the first card that came out was the card of wisdom and going forward. So this is really the opposite energy of snap judgments. He did it. It has to be him. Case closed. Move on. No, these cards are saying there is a long road ahead, and it's going to have to be cool, wise heads that prevail. And I'm actually feeling here that there are maybe investigators or people linked to this case that will stay with it longer than others. I'm being shown it's a bit like a police investigation where, you know, a case is wrapped up, they did it, pack all the files away, but there's one investigator who's like, yeah, I know that's what's being said, but something doesn't sit right with me. Do you know what? I'm going to go back into the office in the middle of the night. I'm going to get everything out. I'm going to do this even in secret maybe, and I'm going to have another look at this because there's something that's not right that's been missed. And that missing part of the jigsaw might not be found straight away. In fact, it's not going to be, is what I'm hearing. There is a long road ahead. And it's going to be a wisdom seeker that helps to unlock this case. The vast majority of people will want to accept the initial finding, and then it will be rubber stamped, and I'm hearing triple rubber stamped. So, be very wary of a quick wrapping up of the case. We could say the same with Idaho 4, a very quick wrapping up of the case. But there were lots of unanswered questions with Idaho 4 and things that don't really quite make sense. But yeah, don't look at that. It is just this one guy. He was responsible. He was there. He was part of it. The question is, were there others? Are there other links? What else was going on in that town? Can we look at that? No. Case closed. Similar type of energy here. We've got the card of Voyage, which came out. And again, I think more than anything, this shows the energy of a whale. Whales are linked to wisdom and depth. Yeah, I'm not sure because I'm not pulling these cards live. Can't remember what else came out yesterday. I do know that I ended with this card, though, which is the card of Wonders. And it might seem a strange card to end on. And I think I want to put this for both Idaho 4 and also Air India Flight 171. The card of Wonder. What this is basically suggesting is that from this place of great tragedy and death, basically, and decay, there is something rather beautiful that can happen as a result. What I was picking up yesterday was it could be something such as, I don't know, with regards to Air India, it could be that somebody who wasn't going to have a child now decides, I am going to have a child. I want to honour, Auntie Mary who died or whoever it is. And the child that comes through is just the brightest spark you've ever seen, and they bring something really important to the world. There's something to be said for communities coming together and showing who we actually are when terrible events happen, that the wonder is concealed within and around the darkness, that does not define us. This tragedy does not define us, that we are going to rise as a community. We are going to rise as truth seekers. We are going to rise and honour all that has been lost and plant even more fertile seeds for the future. So I think we must always try to remember that it is our response to events that matters. Of course, there is an honouring of all feelings that arise, but it is our response and how we then navigate our lives going forward and how we operate that helps to make sense, honour what has happened, and also forge the best path forward for us going forward. Can we take the experiences that have happened to us and forge the brightest path ahead? Because it's said when people die that we live for them, that we live the best life we possibly can for the ones that are no longer here to do that, to appreciate the day more than we once did. So let's all try to do that. And I feel as though those last words that I've just said are very poignant and very relevant, not just for these two cases that we've talked about today, but for things that might be happening in your life too. Thank you for listening. Take great care. If you have found this video helpful, please do share it or just give it a like. By giving it a like, the algorithm shows that people are interested in looking at this and they will show it to somebody else. Thank you very much. Take great care and honouring all that have died in Air India Flight 171 and all in Idaho 4. Prayers for all who are in grief, prayers for our world, and remember, light always wins. Thank you. Bye-bye.